You can't be driven if you don't know where you're going. Best motivational speech by Simon Sinek. In life, momentum without direction is like a car engine running in neutral. It burns energy but gets you nowhere. You can't be driven if you don't know where you're going is not just a statement. It's a call to clarity, purpose, and intentional action. In this motivational speech, Simon Sinek reveals why knowing your why is the compass that transforms aimless effort into unstoppable drive. Every journey begins with a question, and the most powerful of them all is why. Before you choose a path, before you commit to a dream, before you pour your time and energy into something, you must understand the purpose behind it. Most people rush through life reacting to pressures, expectations, and noise. They chase goals they don't truly understand. They work hard but feel empty. They move fast but feel lost. That happens because effort without purpose feels like a burden. But when you know your why, even the hardest work feels meaningful. You begin to wake up with direction instead of confusion. You start choosing intentionally instead of randomly. Purpose becomes your internal compass. It ensures that every decision aligns with who you are and who you want to become. Without why, you wander. With why, you move with clarity and confidence. Your why is not what you do. It is not your job, your talent, your goals, or your achievements. Your why is the emotional reason behind all those things. It is the deeper meaning that fuels your actions. When you understand that, you stop tying your identity to results. Instead, you build your identity around values, intentions, and impact. This is how people stay driven even when success is far away. They don't rely on external rewards or validation. They rely on internal purpose. Your why creates direction because it anchors you to something stable and meaningful. Life will always bring uncertainty, challenges, and setbacks. But your why remains steady. It keeps you grounded and focused when everything around you shifts. People lose direction not because they lack goals, but because they lack purpose. Goals change. Circumstances change. But your why should stay constant. When you start with why, decision-making becomes dramatically easier. You no longer chase everything that looks attractive or sounds promising. You begin to filter opportunities with clarity instead of confusion. A strong why helps you say yes to what aligns with your purpose and no to what distracts you. Most people struggle with discipline not because they are weak, but because they don't know what truly matters to them. Every option looks tempting, every path looks possible, and every distraction feels harmless. But when you know your why, priorities become obvious. You stop wasting energy on things that don't move you forward. This is the foundation of focus. This is how great leaders, athletes, creators, and innovators maintain direction. They operate from purpose, not impulse. When your why is strong, your choices become intentional, and your life becomes a reflection of what truly matters. People underestimate how much energy is lost simply from not knowing where they're going. Confusion drains motivation. Uncertainty creates hesitation. Doubt slows momentum. But clarity energizes you. It sharpens your mind, strengthens your confidence, and restores your drive. When you start with why, even challenges feel different. Instead of asking, "Why is this happening to me?" you ask, "How does this help me grow toward my purpose?" That shift changes everything. Obstacles become lessons. Pressure becomes direction. Struggle becomes transformation. Purpose gives your pain meaning, and nothing strengthens a person more than meaningful struggle. When you understand your why, you can handle difficulty with resilience instead of frustration. You keep moving because you know what you're moving toward. You keep fighting because the destination matters. That is why purpose-driven people appear unstoppable. They aren't stronger, they're simply clearer. Your why also shapes your identity. It determines how you show up in the world, how you treat others, how you respond to challenges, and what you expect from yourself. Purpose-driven people develop a deeper level of self-awareness. They don't chase things just because other people want them to. They don't seek approval at the expense of authenticity. Instead, they align their life with their core values. That's what gives direction strength. When your identity and your purpose match, life feels aligned. You move with unity instead of internal conflict. Without why, people feel constantly pulled in every direction. They're living someone else's ideas, not their own. But when you find your why, you stop living by default and start living by design. You shape the path you walk. You build the person you want to become. And that alignment is what turns vision into reality. The most powerful thing about your why is that it connects emotionally to your future. Goals appeal to logic, but why appeals to the heart. And the heart is far more powerful. Logic motivates you temporarily. Emotion motivates you consistently. A meaningful why gives you a reason to push through discomfort, to stay disciplined during boredom, and to remain patient when results are slow. This is why long-term success cannot rely solely on goals. Goals tell you what to do, but why tells you why it matters. When you face resistance, logic will tell you to quit, but purpose will remind you why you started. Purpose is the fuel that keeps you moving long after motivation fades. It's the voice that says, "This is bigger than you. Keep going." People who win at life are not the most skilled. They are the most purpose-driven. Starting with why helps you align your actions with your future, not your past. Many people define themselves by past experiences, failures, mistakes, or circumstances. But purpose pulls you forward. It helps you rise above old stories and rewrite your narrative. Your why is not defined by what happened to you. It is defined by what you want to contribute to the world. When you think this way, direction becomes clearer. You stop living reactively. You stop letting fear or insecurity dictate your decisions. You begin to think in terms of impact, growth, and possibility. Purpose-driven direction is powerful because it is rooted in who you want to become, not who you used to be. When you start aligning your actions with your why, life stops feeling random. Your past stops limiting you. Your future becomes intentional instead of accidental. Your why also attracts the right people and repels the wrong ones. When you live with purpose, you naturally connect with others who share similar values, similar vision, and similar direction. These relationships strengthen your drive. They push you, support you, and challenge you in meaningful ways. On the other hand, when you lack direction, you tend to surround yourself with people who distract you or drain your energy. Purpose acts like a filter. It helps you build a tribe that aligns with your mission. Simon Sinek often emphasizes that people don't follow you because of what you do. They follow you because of why you do it. That principle also applies to your personal life. A clear why inspires trust. It creates meaningful relationships. It builds stronger teams, friendships, and environments. Your direction becomes more powerful when you are surrounded by people who believe in the same purpose. Purpose also transforms how you measure success. Instead of comparing yourself to others, you compare yourself to your why. You focus on progress rather than perfection. You focus on contribution rather than competition. This shift removes much of the stress and anxiety that comes from trying to prove yourself. When you operate from why, you stop trying to look successful and start aiming to be meaningful. You stop chasing trophies and start building impact. And ironically, the more aligned you are with your why, the more success you naturally attract, because your work becomes genuine, consistent, and authentic. Purpose-driven people don't need to pretend. They don't need to impress. They simply need to align. And when alignment meets effort, extraordinary results follow. Your why becomes the measurement, the guide, and the motivation behind everything you do. In the end, the most important truth is this: purpose creates direction, and direction creates drive. You cannot stay motivated without clarity. You cannot stay disciplined without meaning. You cannot stay focused without a destination. The world will always try to pull you in different directions, but your why brings you back to center. It reminds you what matters, what you stand for, and what you are striving to become. When you start with why, you give yourself something bigger than success. A mission. A mission that shapes your choices, your habits, and your identity. A mission that keeps you moving even when the path is difficult. A mission that turns ordinary effort into meaningful progress. Your why is the beginning of direction, and direction is the beginning of achievement. Find your why, and everything else will follow. Clarity is one of the most underestimated forces in personal growth. People think they lack motivation, discipline, or confidence, but what they truly lack is clarity. When you do not know exactly what you want, everything feels overwhelming. Every choice feels heavy. Every obstacle feels like a dead end. But the moment you gain clarity, your entire mindset shifts. You suddenly understand where to focus your energy. You stop wasting time on things that don't matter. Clarity doesn't just simplify life, it strengthens you. It creates a foundation of certainty that makes fear smaller and courage bigger. When you are clear about your direction, you walk differently, speak differently, and act differently. You become intentional instead of reactive. And that transformation begins the moment you decide to step away from the noise of the world and get honest about what you truly want. Confidence is not something you are born with. It is something you build. And clarity is the first brick in that foundation. Think about it. When you know exactly what you want, you no longer doubt your steps. You no longer question whether you're capable. You no longer fear judgment or failure. You become internally anchored. Without clarity, your confidence is fragile, easily shaken by other people's opinions or expectations. But with clarity, your confidence becomes grounded in purpose. It becomes stronger because it is based on truth, not emotion. You stop feeling lost or uncertain because your direction is defined. Confidence doesn't come from being perfect. It comes from being precise. When your vision is clear, your actions become loud. You show up fully because you know exactly why you're here and exactly where you're going. That is the power of clarity. Most people think confidence comes from results. They believe they will feel secure once they succeed. But true confidence begins long before success. It begins with clarity. Results are unpredictable. Circumstances shift. Life changes. But clarity is internal. It is the voice that reminds you of what you're aiming for, even when progress feels slow. When you lack clarity, you chase too many things at once. You try to impress everyone. You compare yourself to others. You feel unsure, scattered, and frustrated. But when you gain clarity, your life becomes more focused. You stop pursuing everything that looks good and start pursuing what is right for you. That is the moment confidence begins to grow. Not when you win, but when you finally understand what you're trying to win at. Clarity turns uncertainty into direction, direction into momentum, and momentum into confidence. Clarity also gives you the courage to take action. Fear becomes powerful when you are unsure about your path. When you don't know where you're headed, every step feels risky. Every failure feels personal. Every challenge feels like a warning sign telling you to stop. But when you are clear about your direction, fear loses its power. You start seeing challenges as part of the journey rather than threats. You stop interpreting failure as a reflection of your worth and begin seeing it as feedback. Clarity doesn't eliminate fear. It simply makes fear irrelevant. It allows you to move forward even when uncertainty exists, because your destination matters more than your doubt. People who move confidently aren't fearless. They are simply clear. They know what they want, and that clarity gives them the strength to keep going even when the road is difficult. Clarity also simplifies your priorities. Without clarity, everything feels urgent. Everything feels important. You spread yourself thin trying to do everything at once, and in the process, you lose direction. But when you are clear about what truly matters, your priorities become sharp. You naturally stop investing time in distractions. You stop giving energy to things that drain you. You stop saying yes to everything. Clarity gives you permission to focus, and focus is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. When you truly understand what matters, your life becomes aligned. You make consistent progress instead of scattered effort. You feel lighter because you're no longer overwhelmed by endless choices. You're committed to what serves your purpose and unbothered by what doesn't. Clarity creates focus, and focus creates confidence, because you know your energy is being invested in the right direction. Another powerful aspect of clarity is that it helps you communicate better with yourself and with others. When you know exactly what you want, you express yourself with certainty. People listen. People trust. People follow. Clarity builds strong relationships because it removes ambiguity. You stop sending mixed signals. You stop making vague commitments. You become precise, intentional, and direct. This makes you more dependable and more respected, but clarity also enhances your internal communication. Your self-talk becomes clear, not confusing. You know what you expect of yourself. You know what you need to improve. You know what actions matter most. Clarity becomes the language of your mind, reducing stress and increasing confidence. When your thoughts are clear, your actions follow. When your vision is clear, people feel your conviction. And when conviction combines with clarity, confidence becomes natural. Clarity also strengthens resilience. Without clarity, setbacks hit harder because you don't know whether you should keep going or give up. But when your direction is clear, setbacks become temporary, not defining. Instead of quitting, you adjust. Instead of breaking down, you regroup. Clarity gives you something worth fighting for, and that makes you resilient. Think about the people who achieve extraordinary things. They aren't the ones with perfect lives or smooth paths. They're the ones who know exactly what they're working toward. That clarity gives them the emotional strength to endure disappointment, rejection, or failure. Resilience is not built through comfort, it's built through clarity. When you know where you're going, no setback can convince you to abandon the journey. You keep moving because the destination matters more than the detours. Clarity makes you persistent, and persistence builds confidence. One of the greatest gifts of clarity is peace of mind. When you are unsure about your path, your mind is constantly racing. You worry about whether you're doing the right thing. You fear making mistakes. You second-guess your decisions. But clarity calms your mind. It helps you breathe. It reduces anxiety because you no longer rely on guessing, you rely on direction. Clarity creates mental order. It reduces internal chaos. It removes the weight of uncertainty. And when your mind becomes clear, your actions become more effective. You become more present, more focused, and more intentional. Peace isn't found by slowing down life. It's found by aligning life with purpose. When you know what you're doing and why you're doing it, you no longer carry the burden of confusion. Peace creates confidence, and clarity is the doorway to peace. Clarity also attracts opportunities. When you are vague, you receive vague results. When you are unsure, you attract uncertainty. But when you are clear, you attract what matches your clarity. People understand what you stand for. Opportunities that align with your purpose begin to show up. Others recognize your direction and offer support. Clarity creates magnetism. It signals confidence even before you fully feel it. This is why leaders must be clear. This is why visionaries speak with certainty. This is why successful individuals articulate their goals clearly. They know clarity influences outcomes. And the more precise you are, the more your life aligns with your intentions. Clarity helps you become the kind of person who not only dreams, but attracts the opportunities that make those dreams possible. In the end, clarity is the foundation of confidence. Without clarity, confidence is unstable. With clarity, confidence becomes natural. It is not something you force. It is something that rises within you because you understand who you are and where you're going. Clarity turns hesitation into action, confusion into focus, and doubt into belief. It is the blueprint for confidence, direction, and growth. When you know your why and define your what, your how becomes powerful. You move with purpose. You speak with conviction. You live with intention. Life becomes simpler, not easier, but clearer. And clarity is what allows you to face challenges with courage instead of fear. When clarity guides you, confidence follows you. And that combination transforms ordinary individuals into extraordinary leaders. Clarity is not just a tool. It is the beginning of every meaningful success. We live in a world obsessed with big achievements, dramatic changes, and overnight success. But the truth is, nothing meaningful is built in a single moment. Every great accomplishment, every company, every movement, every transformation began with something small, a single idea, a single decision, a single step. Small steps feel insignificant at first, but they are the foundation of every breakthrough. When you take a small step, you create movement. Movement creates experience. Experience creates confidence. And confidence creates momentum. Most people do nothing because they underestimate the power of doing something small. But small is where progress begins. Small is where consistency is built. Small is where habits are formed. You don't need to leap. You don't need to sprint. You just need to start. Because once you begin, momentum takes over, and momentum is often more powerful than motivation. Momentum is not something you wait for, it's something you generate. And the easiest way to generate momentum is by taking the smallest possible action. People fail not because they are incapable, but because they try to change everything at once. They set massive goals, try to adopt perfect routines, or chase unrealistic expectations. And then they feel overwhelmed. Small steps remove overwhelm. They make progress feel manageable. When you take one small action, you immediately feel a sense of accomplishment. That feeling is fuel. It encourages you to take another small action and another and another. A tiny step may not feel impressive, but it shifts your identity. You start to see yourself as someone who takes action instead of someone who waits. That identity shift is what builds momentum. And the more consistent you are with small steps, the faster momentum grows. Small steps are powerful because they bypass resistance. The human mind naturally avoids big changes. It fears uncertainty, discomfort, and failure. But small actions slip past that fear. They are easy enough that your brain says, I can do that. That is the key. Once you start, fear loses its control over you. Resistance fades. Your emotional barriers weaken. That's why the first step matters more than the perfect plan. Momentum begins with motion, not mastery. You don't need to know everything to start. You don't need confidence before starting. Confidence comes from starting. And the beauty of small steps is that they are repeatable. You can take them daily. You can take them even on difficult days. You can take them even when life feels heavy. Small steps are the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. The reason momentum beats motivation is simple. Motivation fluctuates, but momentum compounds. Motivation depends on how you feel. Energetic, inspired, positive. Momentum depends on what you do consistently, regardless of how you feel. And consistency is easiest when the steps are small. Think of momentum like pushing a heavy flywheel. The first push is hard. The wheel barely moves. But with each small push, it turns faster and faster. Soon, the wheel begins to spin on its own, requiring less effort. That's how habits work. That's how progress works. And that's how confidence grows. Big leaps require strength, small steps require intention, and intention builds discipline. Once momentum takes over, success becomes easier, not because the work becomes lighter, but because your mind becomes stronger. You stop fighting yourself. You start supporting your future. Small steps also create clarity. When you take small action, you gather information about what works and what doesn't. You learn faster because you are actively participating instead of overthinking. Big plans often fail because they are built on assumptions. Small steps succeed because they are built on experience. As you take action, your vision sharpens. You begin to understand your strengths, weaknesses, and patterns. You start noticing what energizes you and what drains you. You realize what direction feels aligned and what direction feels forced. Clarity comes from doing, not thinking. And the more you do, the clearer you become. That clarity accelerates momentum because it reduces hesitation. You stop doubting your path and start trusting your progress. Small steps give you real evidence that you are moving forward, and evidence becomes confidence. One of the greatest benefits of small steps is that they make discipline sustainable. Discipline isn't about pushing yourself to extreme limits. It's about showing up consistently, and it's much easier to show up when the steps are simple. When people set unrealistic expectations, work out for 2 hours a day, read an entire book in a week, transform their routine overnight, they burn out quickly. But when the steps are small, 10 minutes, 1 page, 1 action, they become sustainable. You don't need massive effort, you need repeated effort. Consistency creates long-term change, and consistency thrives when the actions are easy enough to maintain. Small steps remove the pressure. They allow you to build discipline gently, naturally, and steadily. And once discipline becomes part of your identity, momentum becomes unstoppable. Small steps also build self-trust. Every time you keep a promise to yourself, no matter how small, you strengthen your belief in your own reliability. Most people don't struggle because they lack ability. They struggle because they don't trust themselves to follow through. And self-trust is built through small wins, not grand gestures. When you complete a small action consistently, your brain begins to believe, I can depend on myself. That belief changes everything. It gives you the confidence to take bigger risks, make bigger decisions, and pursue bigger dreams. Self-trust is one of the strongest forms of confidence, and it grows through small, daily commitments. When you become someone who consistently honors small steps, you become someone who can handle big opportunities with calm and certainty. Small steps create reliability. Reliability creates confidence, and confidence fuels momentum. Small steps also protect you from overthinking. Overthinking kills more dreams than failure ever will. People get stuck imagining everything that could go wrong instead of taking action on what could go right. But when your step is tiny, there isn't much to overthink. You don't need courage, you just need willingness. Small action interrupts the loop of doubt and replaces it with progress. Once you move, even slightly, your brain shifts from, "What if it fails?" to, "What can I do next?" That mental shift is a victory. Small steps turn overthinking into forward thinking. They shift your mind from fear to focus. They remind you that progress is not built on perfect decisions. It's built on consistent movement. And when movement becomes a habit, overthinking loses its power. One of the most powerful truths about momentum is that it multiplies. When you take one small step, opportunities appear that you could not see before. People start to notice your effort. New connections form. New ideas emerge. New possibilities open up. Momentum attracts momentum. It is a natural law of progress. Once you begin, life begins to respond. Not instantly, but inevitably. Every small step creates a ripple effect that expands your world. That ripple builds motivation, confidence, clarity, and resilience. Big achievements are simply the result of thousands of small steps layered over time. Nothing extraordinary is created all at once. It is created through consistent, aligned, intentional action repeated until momentum becomes your greatest asset. Small steps start the ripple. Momentum grows the wave. In the end, small steps are not small. They are everything. They are the foundation of big dreams, the source of confidence, the builder of habits, and the spark of momentum. You don't need a perfect plan. You don't need a perfect timing. You don't need to feel ready. You simply need to begin. Momentum will carry you from there. The beauty of small steps is that they make success accessible to anyone, anywhere, at any stage of life. Progress becomes inevitable because you're no longer relying on motivation. You're relying on movement. And movement, no matter how small, is enough to change your direction, your mindset, and your future. Small steps become momentum. Momentum becomes growth, and growth becomes transformation. Start small. Start simple. Start today, because the moment you begin, momentum starts working for you instead of against you. Discipline is not built from willpower alone. Willpower fades. Motivation rises and falls. Even passion has its quiet days. What truly builds discipline is having a destination, a clear picture of where you want to go and who you want to become. When your destination is meaningful enough, discipline becomes a natural response, not a forced behavior. You stop asking, "Do I feel like doing this?" and start asking, "Does this move me closer to where I'm going?" That shift changes everything. People think discipline is about self-control. But in truth, discipline is about alignment. When your direction is clear, the choices you make each day become easier. You start choosing actions that support your future instead of indulging habits that satisfy the moment. A strong destination becomes your internal compass. It reminds you what matters, and that reminder builds discipline in a way motivation never can. A clear destination does something powerful. It simplifies your life. Instead of juggling endless options, you begin recognizing which actions support your path and which ones distract you. Discipline becomes less about resisting temptation and more about choosing alignment. People who struggle with discipline are often not lacking strength. They are lacking clarity. They haven't defined their destination deeply enough. They don't have something meaningful pulling them forward. But when your destination is specific, personal, and emotionally significant, you naturally begin prioritizing what helps you move toward it. You stop wasting energy on things that don't matter. You stop drifting. You stop procrastinating. Discipline becomes effortless because the future you want becomes stronger than any excuse you could make. A compelling destination gives your present actions purpose, and purpose is the greatest anchor of discipline. Your destination also shapes your habits. Habits don't form because you force them. They form because they serve your future. When you know where you're going, you begin designing habits that support that journey. Each habit becomes a step toward who you want to become. That's why people with strong destinations often appear incredibly disciplined. They aren't relying on motivation, they're relying on structure. They've built systems that match their vision. A destination turns habits into tools rather than chores. You don't read because you're trying to be disciplined. You read because it moves you closer to the person you want to become. You don't train because it's fun every day. You train because it aligns with the identity you're building. Habits rooted in purpose last. Habits rooted in pressure collapse. Your destination gives your habits meaning, and meaning is what makes them stick. A meaningful destination also helps you overcome distractions. In a world full of noise, distractions are often the biggest enemy of progress. But when you are clear on where you're going, distractions lose their power. You no longer feel tempted by everything that comes your way because you can instantly recognize what serves your journey and what sabotages it. Discipline is not about saying no to everything. It's about saying yes to what matters most. Your destination makes that yes obvious. When you know your direction, you stop wasting hours, days, or years on things that take you nowhere. You begin valuing your time differently. You stop giving attention to what doesn't align with your purpose. And that shift, knowing what to ignore, creates an incredible amount of discipline. Your destination quiets the noise because it amplifies your focus. Your destination also fuels resilience. Discipline often collapses at the first sign of difficulty when there is no deeper goal behind it. But when your destination is meaningful, setbacks don't weaken you. They refine you. You push through challenges not because it's easy, but because your destination is worth the struggle. That's the difference between people who quit and people who keep going. Quitters don't lack strength, they lack purpose. They lack a destination powerful enough to justify the discomfort. But those who know where they're going accept adversity as part of the journey. They understand that discipline isn't built during the easy days, it's forged in the difficult ones. A strong destination makes resilience possible. It gives you the emotional endurance to continue when progress feels slow, when the path is uncertain, and when obstacles get in the way. Purpose strengthens discipline through perseverance. Your destination also shapes your identity. People act according to who they believe they are. When you have a destination, you start forming an identity around that future version of yourself. If your destination is becoming a leader, your discipline mirrors leadership. If your destination is becoming stronger, healthier, wiser, or more skilled, your daily actions begin reflecting that identity. Discipline becomes easier because you're not forcing yourself to act. You're becoming someone who naturally does those things. Identity-driven discipline is powerful because it lasts. It doesn't crumble when you're tired. It doesn't disappear when you're discouraged. It becomes part of who you are. A clear destination gives you a future identity to grow into, and once that identity becomes part of your self-image, discipline becomes instinctive. You don't act disciplined, you become disciplined. Another reason your destination builds discipline is that it creates accountability. When you know exactly where you're going, you become aware of the gap between who you are today and who you want to become. That awareness motivates you to show up consistently. You begin holding yourself responsible for your own progress. You develop self-accountability not because someone is watching, but because you know you're working towards something meaningful. A clear destination makes you more honest with yourself. You start noticing when you're slipping. You catch yourself when you're avoiding effort or making excuses. You become your own internal coach. This self-accountability becomes discipline in action. You don't wait for someone to motivate you. You don't rely on external pressure. Your destination is enough to keep you moving. Your destination also makes sacrifice feel purposeful. Without direction, sacrifice feels like loss. You feel like you're giving up comfort, time, or pleasure for nothing. But when you are working toward a meaningful destination, sacrifice feels like investment. You begin trading short-term comfort for long-term growth. You're not losing anything, you're building something. And that shift makes discipline sustainable. You stop seeing discipline as punishment and start seeing it as preparation. Sacrifice becomes fuel. It becomes pride. It becomes part of your story. Every disciplined action becomes a deposit into your future. When your destination is powerful enough, the sacrifices you make along the way no longer feel heavy. They feel necessary. That mindset keeps you consistent, even when the rewards are not immediate. The clearer your destination, the stronger your discipline. This is why vision is so important. If your destination is vague, your discipline will be inconsistent. If your destination is unclear, your effort will fluctuate. But when you define your destination with precision, emotionally, mentally, and practically, you create a roadmap. That roadmap reduces confusion, eliminates hesitation, and strengthens your commitment. People don't stay disciplined because they're strong. They stay disciplined because they're guided. They have a direction that matters more than comfort. They have a future they believe in more than excuses. A strong destination transforms effort into devotion. It turns daily routines into building blocks. It turns challenges into stepping stones. This is the power of vision-driven discipline. In the end, your destination shapes your discipline more than any motivational speech or moment of inspiration ever will. Motivation gets you started, but destination keeps you going. When you know where you're going, discipline becomes a natural expression of your purpose. It becomes a reflection of your values, your vision, and your identity. The clearer your destination, the stronger your discipline becomes. Every decision becomes intentional. Every action becomes meaningful. Every day becomes part of a larger journey. You stop living by impulse and start living by design. And that is the path to true transformation. Your destination builds your discipline builds your momentum, and your momentum builds your future. Define your destination clearly, and your discipline will rise to meet it. Most people believe discipline is something you force yourself into, something you push, something you drag, something you struggle to maintain. But discipline doesn't come from pressure, it comes from purpose. When you have a clear destination, when you know exactly where you're going and why it matters, discipline becomes less of a burden and more of a natural response. You don't wake up early because you have to. You do it because it moves you closer to where you want to be. You don't stay consistent because you're strict with yourself. You stay consistent because you believe in the journey. Your direction shapes your habits, and your habits shape your results. When your destination is meaningful, discipline stops being an obligation. It becomes something you're proud of. Without direction, discipline feels like punishment. With direction, discipline feels like progress. Many people think they have a discipline problem, but what they actually have is a clarity problem. If you don't know where you're going, of course it feels difficult to stay focused. Of course you get distracted. Of course you struggle with commitment. The mind cannot stay disciplined when it doesn't know what it is working toward. But once your destination becomes clear, discipline becomes easier because the mind has a path to follow. It understands why effort matters. It understands why sacrifice is necessary. It understands why saying no to instant gratification is the right decision. Clarity doesn't just guide your actions, it energizes them. A person with a clear destination is naturally disciplined because their brain stops searching for new directions. It simply moves forward one step at a time, driven by purpose rather than pressure. Think about the people you admire, the athletes, the creators, the innovators, the leaders. None of them became disciplined first. They became committed to a destination, and discipline followed as a byproduct. They didn't wake up one day magically disciplined. They woke up believing deeply in where they were going. That belief crafted their habits. It shaped their routines. It built their mindset. When the destination matters deeply, discipline stops feeling like a sacrifice and starts feeling like alignment. You begin to understand that every step, every challenge, every early morning, every uncomfortable moment is not something being taken from you. It is something being given to you. It is giving you progress. It is giving you growth. It is giving you identity. Discipline becomes an expression of who you are becoming. The truth is, discipline is never about self-control. It's about self-congruence. When your actions align with your purpose, they feel natural. When they don't, they feel exhausting. If you are trying to force discipline into a life with no clear direction, you will always feel resistance. You will always feel drained. But when you live in harmony with your destination, discipline becomes instinctive. You start thinking in terms of, this moves me closer, or this moves me further. And that simple awareness reshapes your behavior naturally. You begin designing your environment intentionally. You remove distractions, not because you're imposing rules on yourself, but because they don't serve your mission. Discipline doesn't feel like restriction. It feels like protection. You are protecting your purpose. You are protecting your future. You are protecting the path you've chosen. One of the biggest myths about discipline is that it requires constant motivation, but motivation fades. Motivation rises and falls depending on mood, environment, and circumstances. You cannot build anything meaningful on motivation alone, but you can build everything on direction. When you know where you're going, you don't need motivation, you need commitment. Motivation asks, do I feel like doing this today? Commitment asks, will this move me closer to my destination? Discipline lives in commitment, not motivation. Athletes don't train every day because they feel like it. They train because the destination matters too much to ignore. Entrepreneurs don't work late because they're motivated. They do it because their purpose pulls them forward. Discipline becomes sustainable only when the destination is strong enough to support it. Your destination also gives meaning to your struggles. Without a clear purpose, setbacks feel like signs you should quit. But when your direction is rooted in something meaningful, setbacks simply become part of the process. Challenges don't break your discipline, they reinforce it. You start to understand that obstacles are not telling you to stop. They are preparing you for the destination you've chosen. They are shaping your resilience, sharpening your skills, and strengthening your mindset. Discipline grows stronger when tested by adversity, but only if the destination is worth the pain. People quit not because the journey is hard, but because their why is weak. A strong destination transforms hardship into fuel rather than frustration. A meaningful destination also transforms how you see time. Without direction, time feels wasted, scattered, and unfocused. Hours pass without purpose. But with a clear destination, time becomes intentional. You start prioritizing, you start eliminating, you start choosing what matters. Discipline grows when time becomes a tool instead of an enemy. You stop living reactively and start living purposefully. Every hour becomes an investment in the future you are building. This shift in how you perceive time is one of the strongest drivers of discipline. When the future matters, the present becomes valuable. You become protective of your attention, your energy, and your focus. Not because you're strict, but because the destination deserves your best. Another powerful aspect of having a meaningful destination is that it attracts the right environment. When you are clear about where you're going, you naturally gravitate toward people, habits, and opportunities that align with your path. This alignment makes discipline easier because your surroundings support your mission. You spend time with people who uplift you instead of distract you. You consume content that inspires you instead of drains you. Your habits evolve because your identity evolves. You don't force discipline on yourself. You build an environment that makes discipline effortless. This is how long-term success is sustained, not through willpower, but through alignment. Your environment becomes an extension of your destination. When you have a meaningful destination, even rest becomes intentional. Discipline is not just about working hard. It's also about knowing when to recover. People without direction either push too hard or don't push enough. But people with purpose understand balance. They rest because they want to show up stronger tomorrow. They recover because they value sustainability, not speed. They take breaks, not to escape the journey, but to protect it. This healthy relationship with rest is another byproduct of clarity. When you know where you're going, you understand what is required to stay on the path. Discipline becomes not only about effort, but also about endurance. You learn to recharge with intention. Ultimately, your destination shapes your identity. When you know where you're going, you start becoming the kind of person who belongs in that future. You think differently. You act differently. You carry yourself differently. Discipline becomes the bridge between who you are and who you want to be. And that bridge is built, strengthened, and held together by purpose. If you want lasting discipline, don't start by forcing habits. Start by defining where you're going. Start with a destination that excites you, challenges you, and means something to you. When your future is powerful enough, discipline stops feeling like effort. It becomes a natural expression of your purpose. You don't force yourself forward, you're pulled forward. That is the power of knowing your destination. That is how discipline becomes unshakable.